As the riots continue, the negative press keeps bubbling up and it makes Joe Biden look bad because most of you probably know by now his campaign supported the rioters. Kamala Harris actually solicited funding to bail out the rioters. And, well, they look bad. Of course, the media is doing everything in their power to try and change the cycle, coming out with all these crazy quotes from Donald Trump where he's like saying a bunch of racist things. Oh, please. It's all fake news, and they're trying to distract from this. You see, the other day, there was an event, a walk-away campaign event in Dallas, Texas, and it was violently attacked by a Black Lives Matter mob. Now, I'm not surprised this happens. The violence is asymmetrical. The Trump supporters in Portland who were walking down the street were not instigating with anybody. And the Antifa crackpot killer shot and killed the guy and then lied, and Vice News ran his narrative. And these big tech companies allow it. But what about Kyle Rittenhouse? Nope, you can't say a good word about him at all. Mainstream media is coming to the defense of these people desperate to stop Donald Trump. Why? Because they're deranged. This is derangement. So this group of walk-away individuals like Brandon Strzok, you may be familiar with, they were attacked. Then some guy started agitating, getting up in the crowd. Security guard said, basically back away, got up to him, started pushing on him. The guy put his fist in his neck. Security guard then starts attacking him. Now, the police detained the security guard, but I don't believe he was arrested. As the campaign group, the walkaway campaign group, was going to the police to figure out what was going on, they got attacked by a far left Black Lives Matter mob. The violence being started is targeting conservatives. So I see these posts on Twitter and they're funny. I responded to a couple of them. One of them said that center-right conservatives are more worried about the far left, and so they're not paying attention to the far right, and center-left liberals are more concerned with the far right, and both sides are wondering why the other side doesn't care more about what they think, and that's just not true. This is okay, listen. This is why people have been calling me conservative for a long time, because I'm telling you the truth about this. A lot of moderates, politically homeless, and centrist people are like, I can't understand who's better or worse. The left says the exact same thing I'm saying now, but they're objectively wrong. And I know they say that too. What do you want me to say about it? Let me tell you this. Brandon Strzok, who went and held a campaign event, did not attack anybody. He held a rally saying, walk away, woo, and they waved little American flags. He got attacked. The Molotovs being thrown in Portland. It is not Trump supporters going out and doing this. It is 100 nights of the far left doing this. Where is the far right? When am I supposed to be scared as a mixed race person that the far right is coming to get me? Oh, they say naughty words on the internet. I don't care. They're not in my streets. They're not throwing Molotov cocktails at cops. I don't care about that. I know that if I put on an event, the far right doesn't say anything. I put on an event. Get this. Daryl Davis, headline speaker. The guy famous for de-radicalizing the Klan. Not a single far-right person said anything to me at all. The far left threatened to burn the theater down. So this is a lie. There are people who aren't paying attention, who are the enlightened centrists, and it's funny they try and claim that of me. Now, I'll tell you this. I am rather centrist. I lean slightly left. But I'll tell you the truth. I'm actually looking into what's going on, and it's obvious. If you're a Trump supporter and you put an event where you peacefully wave your little flag, they will attack you. And the media is desperate. A new report was put out. It's hilarious, mind you, where they're like, I've mentioned it briefly, 93% of all of the Black Lives Matter events were peaceful protests. And all of a sudden they all come out and they're like saying things like, see, sorry, it was all peaceful. You know what this says to me? It explains everything. 93% of the Black Lives Matter events were peaceful protests. Great. I don't care. I'm not criticizing peaceful protests. I've been praising them. I'm criticizing this. It's happening. Stop. They don't care. You know why? The left is basically saying when they do this media campaign, there is an acceptable amount of riots and death for their cause. Not for me. The Gravel Institute tweeted that stupid trope where the far left is like, we just want to give everybody health care. And the far right's like, we want to kill people. And centrists are like, gee, which one's worse? As if anybody ever said that. These people are off their rocker. They believe all this fake news and insanity about the far right. Okay, I will clarify this one more time. First and foremost, far-right extremists are bad. Yeah, they're awful. Of course they are. And so are the far-left extremists. Which one has institutional power? Oh, they'll scream, Donald Trump is actually a fascist. That proves it. Except Trump condemned neo-Nazis and white supremacists. Joe Biden won't even say Antifa or Black Lives Matter. Okay, I'm getting into a tizzy. I'm getting angry here. Let me read you the story and tell you what happened. And then I'll show you this data they put out. It's actually really funny. It doesn't prove what they think it proves. It proves they're insane and they're violent. From Post Millennial. Breaking. BLM mob violently attacks Trump supporters in Dallas. A Walk Away Rescue America rally in Dallas to highlight the violence and hypocrisy of the left was violently disrupted on Saturday after leftist counter-protesters, they're not counter-protesters. Brandon Straka was not protesting. I wouldn't call what he did protesting. I would call it having a rally. A bunch of people hanging out, waving little flags and talking about why they don't like the Democrats. It's okay, you can say they're protesting the Democrats, I guess. But when a group of people show up to attack those just in a park peacefully, I wouldn't call them counter-protesters. I'd call them extremists or violent individuals or a violent mob. They attacked event security and attendees, prompting Dallas police to detain a security guard who grappled with a Black Lives Matter activist. Now, this is an interesting thing that needs clarification. I've watched that video. There's a dude with a bullhorn, and he's yelling in a bullhorn very close to people. You could argue that was an assault, like getting a bullhorn really close to someone. It's like you can't march in with a bullhorn and scream in people's faces. Security guard does, I believe, make physical contact with the guy, pushing him back. It's what security's supposed to do to de-escalate. In response, this guy puts his fist to the neck of the security guard, and the security guard swings and starts hitting him. I blame, I'm sorry, man, the fault lies with the guy who walked up to their group and instigated. It's always been this way. When the Battle of Berkeley, the second one, I was there, and maybe it was the third one. I don't know. I think I was there for a bunch of them. When you had all these Trump supporters standing around talking, and the police put up a barricade, Antifa walked in, trampled the barricade, and got in people's faces, and started fights with people. There were people who were far right who were there who ran over and just like whack right into the face of some Antifa guy. But they wait until they are attacked, and if they're not attacked, then nothing happens. But those, like the people who go out and start fights are few and far between. Brandon Straka is not going out and starting any kind of violence. He's just a conservative guy saying, I don't like the Democrats anymore. And they get attacked for it. They say the Black Lives Matter mob also chased down attendees and threw bottles at them and smashed the phone of a Walk Away employee. Brandon Straka, founder of Walk Away, reported that after going to the police station to find out what was going on, he and his group were chased and threatened by BLM activists who were also there. And there's a video of it, and it's gone viral. Tens of thousands of retweets. Did you see what happened to Brandon at the RNC? The homophobic attack by Black Lives Matter? It's shocking to anybody with principle. Back in the day, I remember hearing these stories from the left about these horrifying attacks on people just because of who they love. And I said, that is appalling. We are a country of liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You go do your thing. Negative rights, meaning you want to go in your home and love somebody, do it, man. I'm happy for you. I'm glad you're happy. Let's all be happy together. And I'll do my thing. You'll do your thing. And then, there you go. Now what's happening? The left is actually attacking and screaming homophobic slurs at him. And where was the left to condemn it? They have become insane moral authoritarians. And dare I say, they themselves are homophobic and racist and sexist. What's really annoying is it feels like you've kind of got this like dark Link scenario. You ever play any of the classic Zelda games where Link, the main character, fights an evil version of himself? It's what it really feels like. Right now, someone like Brandon Straka is going and having a peaceful rally with a bunch of his supporters just waving little flags and saying, woohoo, go Trump or whatever. They get attacked. While they're being attacked, the evil side is saying, but we're just defending ourselves. They attacked us. And the media goes, oh, that's right. The evil right-wingers attacked these left-wingers. And they never stop to think, well, but wait a minute. Why are the left-wingers at the right-wing rally? Interesting, isn't it? Brandon Straka tweeted, this was the most terrifying moment of my life. My team and I went to the police to check on detained security agent. 30 to 40 Black Lives Matter began throwing bottles at us and chasing us. They stole my employee's phone and smashed it. We had to run for 4 to 5 blocks. All Dallas news stations were there. Speaking to the Post Millennial, Straka said, when I got there, Next Generation Action Network were doing a press conference, but there were 30 or 40 of them. Eric Alvarez with WFAA ABC 8 asked if we wanted to go live, and I said, yes, I do. And at that moment, they all crowded around us, and someone got between me and the camera. And I told my group not to talk to them. And then I said, let's just go, and they started chasing us. They started throwing bottles at us. I'm not exaggerating when I say we thought we were going to be killed, and they told us they were going to kill us. Eric Alvarez posted footage to Twitter that he obtained from Next Generation Action Network, saying violence breaks out, yada, yada. The event was hosted by the Walkaway campaign and Strzok, who earned his reputation as a former liberal who turned conservative following the Democrat Party's descent into radical leftism. Who's ready to walk away from the radical left today? Strzok asked the crowd during the event, many of whom carried American flags. Isn't that what I was saying? They're waving their flags. They're minding their own business. Strzok verbally condemned Antifa and others responsible for the rioting and looting that has taken over the streets of several major cities. We are here to let you know that your summer of rage has come to an end. Dallas Morning News, which saw fit to highlight the group's largely white mask-free demographic, reported that its attendees praised Strzok for his nonviolent approach to protest. Others shared their dismay over the anti-police riots, which were sparked following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. They want you to believe we're a bunch of racists and homophobes, said Strzok to the crowd. But I'm looking out and seeing black faces here. I'm seeing Hispanic faces here. Strzok was supported by author David Harris Jr., black conservative author Shamika Michelle, and conservative transgender YouTuber and post-millennial contributor Blair White. White, 26, called the upcoming election between Trump and Biden the most consequential election of my lifetime, stating that it was a fight between white guilt or equality, between draconian lockdowns or freedom. A lot of people are confused about who's become the more tolerant, accepting side, said White. It's this side. Yeah. Blair White, trans woman, put on a MAGA hat and got physically attacked in LA. But is that surprising to anybody? I suppose if you only watch CNN, where you can hear them say over and over again, there is no war in Ba Sing Se, don't mind the violent people burning things to the ground, then maybe you wouldn't know these things. But I'll tell you what. The narrative, the analogy is very simple. You're walking down the road and there's a bar on your left and a bar on your right, and the bar on your left is screaming and smashing things and insulting you and telling you to get on your knees. And the bar on the right is a bunch of guys with red caps waving flags saying, woo, America, and yo, come over here, buddy. I got you a beer. And you're like, oh, beer, I like beer. Like, come over here and share a beer with us. And you're like, that sounds good. And then on the other side, the left, they're screaming Nazi and bigot at you. And you're like, I don't know what all that's about, but these guys seem like they're going to give me free beer. That's typically how it goes. And everybody seems to know it as long as you're paying attention. The right, even the far left, claims that the far right does what's called love bombing, where they praise you and tell you how great you are. They do. I mean, it's not complicated. Maybe the left should realize this. They don't. They cancel their own. They are just an insane, paranoid, delusional, violent mob. Not the entirety of the left. Obviously, I'm talking about Antifa. I'm talking about Black Lives Matter. Yeah, I'm talking about Black Lives Matter. Now, they'll tell you over in these studies that it is overwhelmingly peaceful. You see, 93% of all demonstrations connected to the movement were peaceful. Demonstrators have not engaged in violence or destructive activity. Okay. How do they define violence? I thought speech was violence. They didn't say any mean words. They don't. You see how the narrative changes? That's what they do. If you say a naughty word, they'll say violence. Then when they punch you in the face, they'll say self-defense. Yeah, it's a game. But here's what I love. They try to make it seem like everything's peaceful. Yeah, nobody's buying it, dude. All they've done is actually prove a lot of violence. Like, wow. And in mostly Democrat cities. This is amazing. Take a look at this. They say, peaceful protests were reported in over 2,400 distinct locations around the country. Violent demonstrations, meanwhile, have been limited to fewer than 220 locations, under 10% of the areas that experienced peaceful protests. In many urban areas like Portland, for example, which has seen sustained unrest, violent demonstrations are largely confined to specific blocks rather than dispersed throughout the city. You see how they play this game? Okay, whoever said that a riot had to be the entirety of the city? When was that ever the case? Occupy Wall Street was one small city block. Ferguson was one block, West Florissant, but stretched down about a half mile or so. They weren't necessarily rioting throughout all of St. Louis. Baltimore, also confined for the most part. Now, there have been instances where people went out and just looted everything, but it wasn't like a group, right? So in Baltimore, for instance, we were driving around and we'd see a couple people smash a window, jump in and steal stuff. That's just opportunism. That wasn't an organized group attacking anybody. They were looting stores because they knew the police were overwhelmed. This is a narrative they're creating right now because they're desperate. They can't control the far left. No one can. It is the one ring. They think they can wield its power and it is turning them into ring wraiths. It will not work. So here's what happens. In their desperation to beat Trump, they supported the movement. Now they're creating fake narratives. Well, actually, of those that were violent, it was only confined to a small space. Yes, and so was Tahrir Square in Egypt at the revolution. Stop saying stupid things. Well, the media's not, they know what they're doing. You can foment revolution with a small group of people outside the White House. A coup is not widespread throughout the country. It is extremely dangerous to have violent insurgents attacking city centers. And take a look at this map. This is what I love. They're like, here are the riots in orange and here are the protests in blue. I wonder if I can zoom in here and make it a little bigger. This graphic is hilarious because you can see you might notice some commonalities with the orange dots. Why? They're all in major urban centers run by Democrats. Not all of it. San Diego, for instance, has some, but it is a little bit smaller. Interestingly, San Diego's mayor is a Republican. All of the peaceful, look at all the little peaceful ones. What do you notice about the peaceful Black Lives Matter protests blotches? Why, they're all over the rural parts of the country. Amazing. They're still centralized in the more urban areas of the rural areas. So let me try and rephrase this properly. Phoenix, Denver, Los Angeles, Portland, Seattle, Chicago, New York. You get the drift, St. Louis. It is the major urban centers, many of which are controlled by Democrats, where the bulk of the rioting is taking place. And out in the middle of nowhere, in more rural areas, it's just regular old blue. Idaho, for instance, had a bunch of protests, all peaceful. I'm not sure I actually believe them that it's peaceful, and most people are no longer trusting of the press. I'm willing to bet a lot of these peaceful protests, the narrative is based upon the media lying. So therein lies the other problem. We've seen it over and over again. They've said peaceful protest 50 million times. So if they're going to cite CNN right here, September 1st, CNN, are they considering 2,400 locations to be peaceful because the media has refused to call them what they are, violent mobs or riots? And there it is. Now we can truly see why they kept saying peaceful, or their next move. They said, peaceful, peaceful, peaceful. There's no riots. Shh, don't say anything. Then finally, they take all of the reports of peaceful protests, peaceful rioting, mostly peaceful protests, and say, nothing to see here. It's all fine. Some things they couldn't ignore. We know buildings were burnt down. But all they've done is proven that Black Lives Matter is violent and destructive. Amazing, isn't it? This map right here, something the Anti-Defamation League could not do, shows that the far left, Black Lives Matter, engaged in over 220 undeniable acts of violent rioting. 220. And I'm supposed to accept that number and the 35 people dead from the riots and their ensuing and the aftermath? Nah, I'm sorry, man. I'm not okay with that number. There should be no riots and there should be no dead. There is no acceptable number. But the whole game here, they don't want you talking about Joe Biden. They don't want you to realize that the Democrats have actively supported all of this. No joke. One of my favorite graphics, you're going to love this one. Let me see if I can find this graphic here. Oh, this is great. This is great. Here's a gift for you all. Number of demonstrations associated with Black Lives Matter. By demonstration, type in Washington State. Demonstration type. The blue is protest and the orange yellow is riots. Well, as we can see, thank you for pointing this out. During the period of CHOP activity, it was all peaceful. No violent riots during the CHOP. No violence. I think like 5 people died. It doesn't count as a riot because the cops didn't try and stop them. See how it goes? In this map, This chart, it's a graph. They're straight up saying riots and protests. And because the police backed down, even though the CHOP was destroying things, even though they spray painted the whole thing up, which, yeah, counts as property destruction, and several people are dead, they say peaceful protest. And that's the name of the game. When the police back down, the media covers it up. And then we get whatever this garbage ACLE data, ACLED data, whatever. This is the propaganda they're using to try and claim the far left isn't actually engaging any violence. They don't put anywhere in the CHOP activity the deaths. Isn't that funny? I want you to think about that. And now we'll go back up to the original map. They won't show you where the murders are. So why should I believe any of these are peaceful? All you've done on the surface is proven the far left engages in widespread violence not seen by the far right. Please tell me, how many violent far right rallies have there been resulting in destruction and riots? I'm sorry, is the answer 1 or 2? Yes, it is. And it's 220 for Black Lives Matter. Do you know how many people this year were killed by white supremacists according to the ADL? 5. According to the Anti-Defamation League's heat map tracker, 5 people have been killed by far-right white supremacists. How many people have been killed as a result of the far-left extremism sweeping this country? About 32, I believe. I think 30 is the safe number because if we want to include what happened in Kenosha and the guy in Portland who hunted down the Trump supporter and killed him, that's more of the aftermath. In the riots themselves, there's 15 confirmed hard confirmations of deaths from the rioting. And then there's about 15 or 16 more that are peripheral. But the reason I say this is because the reason I'm not saying 31 outright, because I'm trying to be fair. OK, I'm trying to say, OK, you've asserted 15 dead. 5 people have been killed by white supremacists. 15 people are dead because of your riots. Now, there's many more dead because of the riots, and you still have some targeted murders like the guy in Portland, but that won't make the list, will it? Peaceful, they say. Don't forget it. They're lying. They're trying to save Joe Biden. But let's talk about Joe Biden in the next segment. That'll be over at youtube.com/TimCast. It is a different channel from this one. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.